like the idea of creating architecture out of something that already existed or something that was considered rubbish. It took quite a while for that idea to come back out of the cupboard, and it wasn't until June of 2012 when we decided to make it happen. So the first steps were that we made a brief for the Pallet Pavilion project. We said we want to create a community venue for live music that would be made from pallets and that must be able to accommodate 100 people.
And we figured that it'd be easy just to get a trailer and just start driving around and picking stuff up, and that we could build something just with this random assortment of pallets.
After I found online the post on Facebook to develop a pallet pavilion for a venue in Christchurch, I jumped at the opportunity and we assembled a small team to develop an idea. That quickly developed into what the Pallet Pavilion became. And once we were on site, the project itself actually took probably longer to build than it did to design.
Normal people, unskilled people, had to be able to build it. And so that also influenced the design. So you've got all these factors, the recyclability or the reuse, the volunteer building, the functionality, so it had to be able to host a number of people and it had to be versatile.
They were putting literally the finishing touches to the clean-up, the compaction of the Crown Plaza site, right in the corner of Kilmore and Durham Streets. And so suddenly, what we thought was going to look really complicated looked like it might be possible. Jump ahead, yeah, we basically got use of the site, this massive site.
One of the first things that I asked Coralie from Gap Filler was to have access to 20 pallets so we could basically start playing with them. So we started having designing sessions after work, during the weekends, Saturdays, mornings, etc. By basically us interacting with the pallets, stacking them up, moving them around, to basically allow the pallets to tell us what is it that we could really do with them.
We realised that driving around Sydenham and getting pallets on a trailer wasn't going to work, and as part of the negotiations and getting the project off the ground, went to CHEP and fantastically got their support. So we had really an unlimited supply of blue pallets.
Initially I thought, yeah, Pallet Pavilion is going to be brown, it's going to be natural wood colour. And I remember going to the design team and saying, okay guys, we've got pallets, but they're blue. The pavilion will be blue. And it was funny because most people were kind of not that keen on that originally. People were kind of like, oh, blue, I don't know about that. But then actually it worked out really well. I think the blueness of it made it more playful, more fun, and more of a, wow, what's that kind of object in the middle of a vacant site.
I can remember the day that Coralie paced out the project on the site, and she got really nervous. She just said, I think this is too big. And I said, no, 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 it's perfect. It'll be just fine. Because we needed an events venue we wanted it to be for 200 people, and so you needed to have a certain size. So we ended up kind of having this one moment where Coralie was getting cold feet, and I was like, no, no, you're gonna be fine, it's gonna be great. And then the project started to take shape, and it really was, in its magnitude and scale for the Gap Filler team, by far bigger than anything that I think they had anticipated. And certainly, you know, it was even more than I had anticipated, and I think we all just kept going with it because we had already started.
Roger Sutton rang Coralie up one day and said, oh, I'm just looking out the window of my office and at the Clarendon Towers, and they're taking out these huge floor plates. So we went down and asked if we could borrow 23 in the end, and they said yes. So we had, it was still within the CBD red zone at the time, so they, through the course of a week, loaded up flooring slabs on the back of trucks and just trucked them through the red zone, brought them onto site and swung them into place.
We also really wanted the Pallet Pavilion to be built by everyday people. That was a key factor, that normal people, unskilled people, had to be able to build it. And so that also influenced the design.
Everybody who came in ended up giving it another sort of life. And so we started to really shape the project between the community that was involved and also what it was that was possible with the different capacities on the table.
So the build started with a test wall, and that worked. So we had, across 4 weeks, 250 volunteers came along, and I think it was something like 2,700 hours of their time they gave us, and we put together this fantastic structure, this building made from 3,000 CHEP pallets.
I really love that aspect, that people were able to build it themselves.
And that's when the first kind of real, let's say, soul of the project came into being, which was this project wasn't necessarily an architectural piece, but it was more of a social piece.
And I think that's why the pavilion was loved by so many people in Christchurch, because you know, more than 300 people really were involved building it. And then however many volunteers involved activating it, however many people put on events there, the stake that people have in it was massive.
It's been a real privilege to take part in this rebuild, and I'm very proud of all the other people here too that have created this amazing place, and I'm sure that it's going to be quite a landmark here in Christchurch for a while to come.
So the whole reason for creating the project was that we wanted to respond to a need in the city, and that was a need for venues, particularly for live music, but also for community events.
My daughter Amy at the time was studying jazz, and we knew that the earthquake had destroyed a lot of venues within the city, and a lot of talented musicians, artists, performers were struggling to find anywhere to put forward showcase their skills. So one of the things that we said that we would do is we would have the venue as a location where people could come and play music of all kinds. Right through our first year, we had musicians benefiting, because what we did, we gave them an open stage, we didn't charge them anything, and we had a co-hire at the door, so some musicians actually went away with quite a bit of money for their 2, 3, 4 hours entertainment. So that was very beneficial, and it gave them a lot of confidence, and it gave them a venue to perform, whereas a lot of their other places had been lost.
I guess for me, what I think was what made it so important was the fact that anyone could walk in. It doesn't matter if you were wearing a suit or if you were wearing second-hand shoes. And I didn't care that much about what I'd wear on stage, because I'd just go in and rock up, play my piece, go and sit and have a chat with someone afterwards. And just every time I meet someone new and someone had something nice to say or would have a story to share.
It just created that venue that's almost like a safe environment where people could still come and express themselves.
The people that came in, they usually came in with a smile. They usually left with a smile, and there weren't that many places at the beginning where that was happening.
Yeah, this project, I think, in the post-quake chaos of Christchurch, where So much has been out of people's control. Their homes have been destroyed or damaged, and this project has allowed people to be creative, but to make something positive from that. So to get some control back.
Projects like the Pavilion and the rest of the gap filler work is giving the community something to physically be part of in the rebuild, something that they can claim and lay ownership to. And that for me is so important. When the rebuild is going to take the length of time that it is, this is what matters. Projects like this.
Great thing about Gap Filler and what they do is they respond to what people need in the city, and then they provide opportunities for people to experiment just for a short time the thing they wanted to do. So that's what Megan did with the Woohoo Cafe, where she kind of set up the cafe and then trained herself to see if she was up for having a cafe in the future herself.
The cafe was in a caravan, an old Zephyr caravan, and it had all these cupboards and beds, and we basically stripped out this big couch bed, and we stripped out a big wardrobe, and we put in this big countertop and built a special platform that was strong enough for a commercial coffee machine and a grinder, and we added a little table where we could serve from as well, a little servery.
Gap Filler strongly believes is that everyday people, normal people, should be able to participate in the recovery of their city. They should be able to get their hands dirty.
Suddenly, a whole group of people appeared and who said, can I help with the cafe? Can I print posters? Can I run this? Can I be a steward? And it was quite remarkable, and we probably gathered a core team of about 10 people, and between us we were able to run the cafe, run the bar.
The volunteer aspect of what we do is really, really important, because everything is made possible by our volunteers. We've only been able to do so much because of those people, and it's extremely rewarding, I think, for people to get involved in their city, but to feel like they're contributing. And it's really rewarding for us as an organisation to be able to provide these volunteer experiences, but also experiences that volunteers feel like they really have a stake in. That rather than just turning up and doing something, they really feel connected to the work that they're doing.
It's brought together a very diverse group of people, many of them who are volunteers, and everybody has learned tremendously along the way.
So the pavilion was meant to be a 5-month project, a summer project, and in March the board said to me, great, it's been wonderful, hard work, but it's got to come down. And that's because Gap Filler financially just could not afford to keep this venue running. It has a lot of costs associated with it as a community space. And so, okay, that was hard for me, but all right. But then what happened was lots of people came in and were coming in and finding out about it and saying, no, you can't take it down, this is amazing. It's too soon. So I went back to the board and said, look, this is what people are saying. I think we've got to try something else. I want to run a crowdfunding campaign to see if we can raise the money to keep it. We needed $80,000 at least. And the board said, okay, Coralie, but this is the last it's the last chance for the project, it just can't stay. So that's what we did, and we put it out there that people could sponsor a pallet for $30, get their name on it. That's why the pavilion ended up having all these beautiful names in yellow for the second summer, and that's how we raised the money through Pledge Me. Basically, we're offering you the opportunity to sponsor a pallet. If you want to sponsor a pallet, you should go to our website. So we gave people the chance to sponsor a pallet for $30 each, and for that they got their name written on the pallet in yellow, and that's why the pavilion looked quite different and quite beautiful in the second summer, because it was full of names, and people used to come in to find their name, or they would send someone who lived in Christchurch in to take a photo of their name. And that was a really wonderful aspect of the project, because you could see the community ownership of it visually, because there it was, all over the walls.
The testimony, I think, to the value of the project was the response we got. That in a relatively short space of time, we raised over $80,000.
So many people fell in love with it and enjoyed it, that through the social Pledge Me campaign, driven by Gap Filler, we were able to raise enough money to keep it going for a second year. And we brought in a new team of people who again took it to a different level. Coralie was marvellous. She basically gave us carte blanche and said, go ahead and put on events, functions, whatever. We'll provide the venue, and it's up to you to actually make it work.
I mean, there are lots of other events that happened in the Pallet Pavilion. It's one of its strengths, I think, was its diversity and flexibility. So it hosted cinema and markets and book launches and lectures and classes and dinners and all those sorts of things. And it was quite wonderful the way it would transform from event to event, or from gig to gig.
I think the common site as a whole really affected Christchurch in terms of bringing people back into the city. The amount of families, children who hadn't been back into the city because they had no reason to. A lot of the businesses that moved out into the suburbs, they never had a reason to come back in. So just having that something to do on a Saturday morning, come down to the pavilion, get some food from the local food vendors, listen to some music, play some gap golf, was really a good chance to engage with the city again.
There were lots of people stopping in for coffee, and weekends there were lots of families coming around, especially after the gap golf started. There were quite a few people would come around and do the round of golf.
The final amazing event was the Deconstruction Orchestra, which was kind of conceived by Harry Knight, but then Trent made it possible with Pandemonium and Brett Painter. And it was just such a, for me personally, a euphoric night. It was really the saying goodbye to the project.
The idea was to use construction tools and processes to create a musical, if you like, or create some sort of musical response to the construction of the pavilion and ultimately its deconstruction. I remember, just what seemed to me like the sort of huge outpouring of emotional support for the gap filler team and having created the space, and sort of signing it off with this unique event, and it was a fantastic way to go out and say goodbye to the venue. So whilst I was apprehensive in April 2013 about taking the pavilion down, by the time we came to February, March 2014, I was ready to take it down. The venue had served its purpose, we felt, and I felt it had really done an amazing job over that extra summer, but I guess at some cost. Organisationally it was very time consuming and emotionally consuming. We had a great venue management team. They needed support as well, and that took our time, and so it was good to know that we were going to take it down, and with that certainty I got some clarity around how that process might look like, or what that process might look like. So the deconstruction started off amazingly well. It was another one of those serendipitous moments. We had some 160 Lincoln University students come in, and they went through the pavilion like a plague of locusts and stripped out everything that was, manhandleable. All the plants went, all the tables, the chairs, all the seats. We had an electrician come in and take apart all the electrics. All the lights went out, all the switches, everything got stripped out right back to the container, and all the irrigation was taken out. We got everything we could done before we started on the walls. We also had all the floor lifted up as well, so we had all these people who were lifting up the 500, 800 pallets that made up the floor, and got all those out and started these sort of pallet stacks. Smith Crane came on board and came back to the site. They delivered the foundation slabs. They came back with a small crane and a couple of people. All the rods came out as I had planned, like toothpicks out of cheese, pulled them out again using the crane. Once we had nutted out the little idiosyncrasies about getting the first section of wall off, what I had allowed for which was 5 days, we managed to do in a day and a half. So in a day and a half, we basically reduced the pavilion to its half height. Volunteers came back again and stacked all the pallet walls into fork liftable stacks. And pretty soon we had some 2,500 pallets ready to go back to CHEP. We were overwhelmed. We just had people day after day coming in all weathers. We had some terrible weather, and right from lifting pallets and plants and furniture through the electrics, through the irrigation. Again, so the community came together and helped us take the pavilion down.
We wanted to create a temporary venue. It was always meant to be temporary. And we wanted to use something that already existed and store it as architecture, and then at the end of the project that all those things that had come together to be stored as the building would then go back to being those things. And so part of the design was, what can we do to the pallets so that they will go back to being pallets at the end of the project? So that meant we had to work with the company, CHEP, around what was the kind of permitted level of damage. And so they came up with a hole of a certain diameter that could go through the boards in the pallets, not the bearers, the boards, that would not structurally compromise the pallets. So that at the end, which is recently, they went back to CHEP. Some of the boards that were broken were replaced, but on the whole, the pallets just went back into circulation.
What we've really gotten out of this period, if we will, in a post-earthquake Christchurch context, is that experimentation is really valuable. And I think to make sure that there's a place, not necessarily it has to be designated, but it can be shifting and changing, but accept that we need a place for experimentation and allow for that to exist in all of its successes and all of its failures.
Gatfiller is still making use of the same piece of land where the pavilion used to be, and it's called the Commons. And so the experiment into community-driven public space continues. It didn't end when the Pallet Pavilion came down. We have currently the retro sports facility, a food collective and more on the site, and we continue to try to bring life to the city but give people a chance to get involved with doing that.